And thank you for attending this presentation on the walnut mold of the walnut management of the mold. And we would like to present this, which is very similar to what I presented before. And before I start, I should thank the people that really cooperated in this project. So always I will start with definitions, because there is some confusion about what is whole rot, what is mold, and what is decay. The whole rot is defined as infections by fungi mainly, and this will decay the hulls. And once we have the decay of the hulls, the green color of the hulls will change to dark brown, and the hulls will become leathery and will be firmly attached to the shell. And this may lead to perhaps staining of the shells. Now, the mold is one of the 7 different type of damage a kernel can have, and is defined as the fungi or molds that are attached to the kernel. Sometimes they are obvious, and when they are not obvious, mycelia will cover 1 square centimeter or 1/8 of the surface of the kernel, and whatever is lesser, that will be considered mold. The decay is the advanced stage of the mold. If the mold develops to a great extent, it will decay the kernel, and there will be a decomposition, and that is how the decay is defined. Now, here is an example of a sample that has 21% mold. Of course, you cannot see mycelia, but apparently the DFA inspectors can see the mycelia. And this is a sample from Tulare County, where we went back and we did some trials. I'll show you results from these trials. In comparison with the marketable crop, as you can see here, it looks very good. And to the decay down here, you can see the obvious decomposition of the kernel. And of course, this is too very extreme. Why we're studying mold? Mold has been studied for years in the 1970s, and then there were no studies about mold, but recently in Butte County, farm advisors and pest control advisors, growers reported very high levels of mold, 30 to 40% in some cases, and in 2018, 19, 20, and in 2020 also we had mold, high levels of mold down here in Fresno County and Tulare County, up to 21%. Now, in 2021, the same orchard that showed 21% mold in Chandler showed only 2%, which is an indication that the environmental conditions really play a major role for the development of the mold. Over the years, in the 1990s, Mark Doster and I, we studied a little bit, a couple of years, non-funded by the industry, but we were doing studies on nuts in general. And we found out that nuts that will have mold, more mold, there will be nuts that will have a Nevalorgium infestation, or nuts that show symptoms of sunburn. If nuts have shrivel husks, nuts that have large openings at the stem end in comparison with varieties with very close opening at the stem end. And also we found, interestingly, the larger nuts have more mold in general than the smaller nuts. And when we started the windfalls, we found out that these nuts that stayed on the ground for almost 2 weeks, they'll have more mold than the freshly shaken nuts. And this will confirm a study that was done by Bill Olson, a farm advisor in Butte County in 1976. So the walnut industry then, because of these high reports in mold, they wanted to support research on mold, and we applied, and the main objectives of our research were to identify all possible organisms, fungi that cause mold, and determine when these develop and some of the factors that affect the incidence of mold. And of course, the most important, try to develop mold management by applying, well, of course, here is the first time bloom sprays, and we'll show why. And also confirm that pre-hole split and early split, early hole split sprays can be effective in reducing mold. We did surveys over the years. So this is a sample survey from 2020. And we can see here an array of different microorganisms of different fungi that we can isolate from walnuts with mold. And we found out that in orchards where the Protruspheria and Femopsis, canker, and blight were prevalent, these fungi will end also developing mold in walnuts in the harvested crop, Protruspheria here and Femopsis. But the most common were Alternaria, Fusarium, and Aspergillus niger, and also some other occasional Cladosporium, or here Neofusicoccum. I'll report on this a little more. So the prevalent fungi that cause mold are Alternaria and Fusarium, and the third will be Aspergillus niger. And in orchards with Protruspheria and Femopsis, canker, and blight, Femopsis and Protruspheria will be common in this moldy walnuts with mold. Now, if you take a look of this diverse number of fungi that occur in walnuts with mold, you'll see we have the Fusarium here, the Alternaria, the Aspergillus, and the Penicillium. All these are airborne, produce spores that become airborne. And what Mohammed Nouri was saying, that they can be transferred with the dust, with the soil dust, as the grower shreds the prunings. Now, Protruspheria and Femopsis, Femopsis and Protruspheria here, these are fungi that produce pycnidia, but also in walnuts, these fungi can produce the perfect stage, which is the sexual stage, the stage that produce the ascospores, and those can become airborne in the orchards and can spread by air. So, so in a way, all these fungi can become airborne and can be transferred to the hulls of the walnuts to get infections. Now, there is a continuum here, and you'll see that the whole rod will lead to mold, depends how fast it will grow from the hulls into the nut, and depending on the extent of the pathogen grown in the kernel, that will lead to decay, which is the extreme decomposition of the kernel. Now, we wanted to identify what fungi we are dealing with. In the literature, studies in Italy and Chile, they reported different Fusarium species in Alternaria. And we found, again, a multitude, 3 different species, perhaps there are more, of Fusarium, but they are different than what they reported. We found the same species of Alternaria, which are universal species. Alternaria alternata being the most common, and also all these fungi, the fungi that can cause Protruspheria canker, and the Femopsis here, as well as 2 new fungi that lately appear in higher levels, the Neoskittalia Dimittiatum and Nigrospora. Now, this is hull rot by Nigrospora. You can see that the decay of these hulls does not affect the color of the hulls very much. The hulls remain very light brown or greenish, and this is very different from the hull rot of the Alternaria or Fusarium or other fungi, and also from the hull rot or the blight of the fruit by Protruspheria. So in 2020, samples showed high levels of these nigrospora. And in 2021, in fact, in one orchard, a very high level of nuts were with that special whole rod. And if you take a look of the culture of this nigrospora, it's very similar in morphology with Protruspheria, but it does, this culture here, the nigrospora produces this type of spores, which are airborne spores. And that is why we found in the holes and in the kernel. The Protruspheria, you can see there are different fungi, very different in not only in morphology, but also in the production of the spores. And the other very common fungus that we recover lately from whole rot and mold of walnuts is the Neoskittalia Dimittiatum, which can cause very dark holes here, infected holes. And this is the fungus. So when we isolate this fungus here, all the mycelia of this fungus can break to pieces and become spores. And this is nothing new in walnuts. This is the fungus that the new name is Neoskittalidium now, but it's the old fungus, Chondrocenula torulloidea, which causes the branch wilt of walnuts. And remember this branch wilt here, the fungus will develop to black powder that will spread into the air and become very airborne. Now, lately also, we found in more and more cases, this fungus attacking almonds, causing, of course, the fungus belongs in the Protruspheria. It can cause also cankers on almonds. It can cause this whole rot on almonds, the same type of fungus, and also these infections on the holes will result to the shoot blight. So it's becoming a potential pathogen in walnuts, attacking the holes and also the kernel. So when we started we wanted to dissect this mold of walnuts a little further to find out how the infections originate. And when we split these nuts and we determined the origin of the colonies, we found out that most of the mold will start from this end, from the styler end. In 2020, when we examined samples from nuts collected from the trees and nuts from the ground, we found that the styler end origin was 4 to 8 times more than the origin from the stem end. Or this is the type of nuts that we cannot make a decision because the mold was covering the entire kernel. We repeated the study in 2021 and with more samples, 16 samples. I'm showing you here 8 of the samples. And you can see with the exception of 2 samples here, number 4 and number 8, that show equal incidence of mold origin from the styler or the stem end. The rest of the samples had a much higher level, significantly higher levels of origin starting from the styler end, which indicated to us perhaps we're dealing with styler infections at bloom time. So to study this, if this is true, in previous years, we inoculated walnuts starting in June, and we ended in October. But in 2021, we started really at bloom time to see if we'll have an infection, more infection of the with this type of inoculations. So these are nuts that are inoculated in the field on the trees, and they are maintained in net bags until the harvest time. And so we inoculated with Alternaria fusarium, and you can see here, we were successful to get more infections more infections here with Alternaria at bloom time than the control, the inoculated with water. And here with fusarium, the same type of infection, very high, significant infection in comparison with the inoculations with water. When we inoculated with Aspergillus niger at the same time, so we didn't have much of a difference here, which means we know that the Aspergillus niger does not like low temperatures, and perhaps this is the reason why we did not get more infection with Aspergillus niger. However, later in the season, when the temperatures increase, Aspergillus niger causes more infections, and of course, it can be found in dust, very common in dust, and that explains here why we have more infections later in the season with Aspergillus niger that becomes airborne and likes also high temperatures. So we also, to make sure that the stigma is susceptible to infection, we collected stigma from a chandler, from a chandler. This is an example here. We isolated after surface sterilization, and we can recover Alternaria and Fusarium in very high levels in comparison with the other fungi. So this may partially explain why we perhaps we have infections that can start at early time, or we know with Alternaria in other crops, infections can start at bloom time. For instance, pomegranate, the black heart can start at bloom time when the flowers are open. And so this may be the case also in walnuts that may lead to some mold later in the season. So we wanted to see also if the fungi that cause mold are the same as those that cause whole rot. And we did isolations from all these whole rot from the hulls and also from the kernels. And we found that indeed samples from 3 orchards gave us very good correlation, which is an indication that we're dealing with the same fungi. The ones that can start also from the hulls can go inside and can cause a level of mold in walnuts. So this type of findings suggested to us that initially that we probably have to apply pre-hull split sprays or at the early hull split, and to see if there is an effect in reducing, protecting the hulls and thus reducing the mold of the walnuts. So to manage this disease, we in previous studies we showed that the sprays were done, which are done in mid-May to mid-July for Protruspheria, Femopsis can reduce this disease, but those sprays were not very effective in reducing the Alternaria and Fusarium, and I showed you results previously. But now the new information is here is that stylar and infections suggest that some infection may occur at bloom. Thus, is there any effect of bloom sprays? And that is what we experimented with in 2021. Then the correlation of mold with whole rots suggests that if hulls were protected, lower levels of mold would develop, and thus we wanted to see the effects of sprays before hull split and also at early hull split. We went to an orchard in Tulare. This was a suggestion by Steve Seabed. We found a good grower cooperator, and we did this trial here. We want to see if bloom spray only or bloom sprays with early before hull split, and the different combinations, 3 weeks before hull split, 1 week before hull split, 3 weeks before, and 1 week, and the anterior control. These are the treatments. The fungicide chosen here was the Luna Experience, and with the surfactant. And this is what we evaluated samples here. We collected 200 nuts per tree, 10 trees replication in this experiment. And we found out that our evaluations show no difference at all in regards with the untreated control. And this is by splitting the nuts and examining the mycelia. When this half of the sample was given to Diamond Foods, they evaluated the mold, And again, they found no difference among the treatments in comparison with the control. And you can see here the levels are very, very low, the way they evaluate in comparison with what we evaluate the presence of mycelia on the kernel. We tested the Chandler variety, was the previous two slides. Also the same experiment was done with Tulare. This evaluations in the laboratory, much lower incidence of the mycelia here, no difference among the treatments. And when these samples, half of the samples were given to Diamond Foods for evaluation, they found a significant difference. It didn't make much difference. I'm sorry here, the x-axis is all messed up here, but this is the control, but it doesn't make much difference here, really. We did not have any differences among the treatments, but there was significant difference on some of the treatments. The bloom spray here in comparison with the anterior control. This is the only difference we found, significant difference by applying one bloom spray only. So we did a trial also to try to see if a bloom, only one bloom spray will make a difference using early cultivar, the Ivanhoe, and different treatments here with Marivon at bloom, and also pre 1 week before hot split, Marivon at bloom, Marivon tebuconazole 3 weeks, and 1 round before 1 week before hot split. And the spray control, unfortunately here, I think the grower sprayed this treatment, and so we couldn't get any results with the only one bloom spray. But here, again, these results correspond with what we found in previous years. These sprays 3 weeks and 1 week before hot split give us a good reduction of mold, 38 to 64 here, as you can see here, and also reduction of the whole rot from 31 to 38%. We did a trial also with the Chandler 2021. The choice fungicide here was Rime at 7 ounces per the label rate per acre. And we did 3 weeks, 1 week, and at early hot split 20 to 30%. And we found out again, no difference here if you apply 3 sprays or 1 spray. We have a reduction, significant reduction from 57 to 72% reduction of mold in comparison, whole rot in comparison with the control. We did a study also with Livermore in Butte County. This was done with Rime by injecting the Rime into the irrigation. Injections occur the first week of May, second week, first week in June, and the third injection in the second week of July. The samples here were 3 samples of 200 nuts. Perhaps the sample was too small. We didn't find significant difference. Perhaps if we are going to repeat this, we need to increase the size of the sample. There is some trend here, but still the variation is great. And I believe the sample was too small for this large plot. So the main fungi for mold are Alternaria and Fusarium, and the third can be Aspergillus niger. We found 3 different species of Fusarium, different from what have been reported in the literature, and also 2 potential species, Neoskittalia and Nigrospora, that may become a harmful mold fungi in walnuts in the future. So when Botrytis Femopsis cankers are present in the orchard, you will find mold that can be caused by this fungi, as well as Neoskittalia. We confirm that there is a strong correlation of the fungal pathogens that attack and cause whole rot, and those that cause mold of kernels. We also confirmed that mold started from the styler end. This is the second year we confirmed this. The styler end origin of mold is much higher than the origin from the stem end. And at least we show only once that the spread bloom that was in Tulare cultivar reduced the mold significantly and similar to sprays that were done at before whole split. But I put a question mark here because we need to repeat this. And we confirm that sprays 3 and 1 week before whole split and early whole split can reduce whole rot and also mold significantly. And I think with this and also perhaps some trials in 2022 to complete the studies will help us to complete this project. But one question I have is the comparison of the evaluations of mold in our laboratory, which is done with a microscope, are much, much different from the comparisons of the diamond foods. And I would like to compare some more samples here to see what is the big difference there. I know that they don't use microscope, but in a way, I don't know what's going on. So with this, I would like to thank the Walnut board for funding this research, the Diamond Foods for evaluating a lot of samples, farm advisors who cooperate, and growers that really provide sites, and Steve Siebert for his cooperation and for his great suggestions. And with this, thank you.
Thank you very much, Themis. I guess we're gonna move with the live polls, and I'm gonna turn it over to Carrie.
Thank you, Mohammed. I am launching the first question. What are the main pathogens causing walnut mold? Protruspheria and Femopsis, Cerium and Alternaria species, bacteria that also result in walnut blight. I'll give a few moments to respond to that question. Okay, I will end the poll and share the results. Themis, what's the answer to that question?
The answer is Fusarium and Alternaria are the most common. And in fact, a lot of samples will show this. And I repeated that several times in the talk, that Alternaria and Fusarium will be the first. Third will be Aspergillus niger.
Thank you very much. And we'll go to question number 2. How do walnut mold fungi reach and infect the fruit? They are carried by navel orangeworm, they are carried mainly by blowing dust, or they are carried by agricultural machinery like harvesters, etc. Give a few minutes to respond to that. As for tomorrow's session, I've had quite a bit of questions about that. It will be general orchard management, and there is no DPR continuing education credits for that, but there are CCA credits. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll in 3, 2, 1. And share results. And Themis, what is the answer to that question?
Okay, that's correct. The second answer is correct, 77%. So both Mohammed Nouri and myself, we emphasize that dust, these fungi become airborne. So dust can be a problem.
Thank you. Another reason not to drive fast, right? Okay. All right, and the last one. Which fungicide sprays are the most effective in reducing walnut mold? Fungicide sprays in mid-May and mid-June, fungicide sprays at bloom time, fungicide sprays applied at pre-harvest, I'm sorry, fungicide sprays applied at pre-hull and early hull split stages. Give a little bit of time to respond to that question. Okay. I think I'm going to end the poll in 3, 2, 1. We'll share results. Okay, Themis, what's the right question there?
Most people got this right, 70%. Fungicide sprays at bloom time only once they show significant difference. This is not confirmed. In fact, when I made these questions, I did not have the results of this experiment. So I will go now with the third question, with the third answer there. That's the right one at this moment.
Okay, so fungicide sprays applied at pre-hull split and early hull split stages, to the best of our knowledge at this moment.
At this moment, yes.
The future may change that, but we're not there yet.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Themis.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, here, okay. I'm not sure if I even shared I hope everyone saw that. Okay. Mohammed, I'll go ahead and toss it back over to you for the Q&A.
Yes, so we have one question, and the question is, what is the difference between mold and rancid?
The walnut can be rancid with no mold, and vice versa. The rancidity is a different phenomenon, but mold can cause rancid also. So, but you can find rancid walnuts with no mold.
Yes. Thank you, Themis. That was the only question we had from the participants. Thank you very much for the great talk here.